metal aficionados, this is Marcus from ROCKMETALBANDS.com, and today I'm about to present you the video review of Autopsy's Sophomore album, Mental Funeral. When ex-comrade's death returned to Florida and Reifert played drums on the demos between 86 and 87, Reifert decided to do the opposite than Death, which were refining their sound, and all the other death metal bands that were just trying to be faster than the others. When he founded Autopsy, his aim was to be sicker, rawer, slower, and he achieved this result, and he's still doing it today. He's been able to do something more extreme than the already extreme for those times, Scream Bloody Gore by Death. The version in my hands is a reissue of 2009 by Peaceville Records. It contains the 12 tracks of the album together with 3 bonus tracks: Retribution for the Dead, Service for a Vacant Coffin live, and Ridden with Disease in a demo version. All these tracks were digitally remastered in 2003 at Transformation Studios. My version contains 4 pages and additional photos on the inside. If we examine the artwork and the disc itself, we have to say that the front cover portrays high and large the logo of the Californian band. Each letter is composed by a monster with a snaky tail, and the whole logo is dripping lots of blood. Then below and smaller in red characters that seem made by a graffiti artist with a spray can in a 90s style, we have the title of the album, Mental Funeral. By the way, a great title. At the center of the front cover we have a painting by Kev Walker, who was also responsible for the alternate cover of the debut album. The painting depicts a huge monster with tens of deformed faces and scary teeth. All these faces are deformed in different ways and looking towards different directions. It's a dark green monster, something similar to a toad deformed by radiations or something like that. One face contains another. Then there is one face devoid of eyes and one ear. Instead it has claws. So we have this monster with 2 paws and several claws or horns. We don't know for sure. All these deformed faces are stretched out in a wide manner, extremely, in a way that may remind what happens in some harmless cartoons, or also in some old violent cartoons such as Berserk. There is a similarity with some monsters that you could find there. But it's also interesting to note that these faces, which are stretched and deformed, might be a reference to the debut album, where the unlucky protagonist's skin is widened towards different directions by several hooks, and this was a homage to the most prominent scene in Hellraiser, and we all know that Reifert and company are big fans for horror flicks. In the 2 inner pages we find a black background where the lyrics are written in a type and in a pattern that was trendy back then, but it still looks good nowadays. Then in the 4th page we have a photo in black and white of the band near an electrical tower, and this was probably chosen to increase the feeling of melancholy and depression. Then, when we get to the disc itself, we can see that it reprises the front cover, zooming part of that. When we pull the disc off, we see a collage of photos, mostly from the members of Autopsy. They are in black and white, and they are especially from live situations. Finally, we have the back artwork, where we see a photo of the band in color, which was taken from the same sessions near the electric power station, but this time they are near a curved bridge, which is just a giant electrical grid. And then we have all the additional info about the recording and lyrics of the album. One interesting anecdote I want to tell you about Autopsy is that they've taken the name from a 1975 horror flick that Reputed considers one of the best crafted of the genre. It's something that not many people know, and it confirms the love for the horror genre for all the members of the band. Now, if we analyze the lyrics, we have to say first of all that this is not a real concept album, but all the lyrics have one theme in common, which is death. If you want to read the detailed list of the lyrics, you can go to our official website and read the detailed written review. The engineering side of Mental Funeral is pretty interesting in that it was recorded pretty fast, just in 6 days between the 20th and the 26th of 1990 at different first studios, a studio which was established in 1968 and is still active. A studio in San Francisco where tons of bands and artists went to record, and it's interesting that Pro Tools wasn't used back then, just very few studios used to have that, so it was recorded the old way, but they have been able, with the assistance of Ron Rigler, to achieve a clean and balanced sound, which is very effective today too. It's also interesting to note that some people claim that the first batch of the album was recorded in a slower mode than normal, but we cannot confirm that. And now I want to examine the most important tracks with you. Of course, I cannot make a track-by-track analysis. For this, I submit you to read the whole detailed review on our website, but I've chosen a few selected tracks which are pretty representative of the spirit of the album. First of all, we have Twisted Mass of Burn Decay, which is the logical continuation of the debut album. But already with the following In the Grip of Winter, things change. We have a grooving with mid-tempo, enriched by tasty bass lines, and then we have the two guitars embroidering licks and a doom death metal riff. And at a certain point we have to think of similarities with bands such as Melvins. And this is confirmed by Reputed, who has always claimed that he's been influenced back then by bands in the doom metal area, such as Black Sabbath, Saint Vitus, Trouble, Candlemas, Witchfinder General, and so on. Fast death metal blast beats land on multiform riffs, interrupted by a super heavy power chord, in turn replaced by caveman vocals which seem to anticipate a godly retribution falling from the sky, are what we have to expect from Robbing the Grave. A dynamic time variation follows, while the finest vocals of the album are present on this song. Another track I want to mention is Bonesaw. Just 46 seconds of ultra-fast instrumental thrash metal blended with a death metal riff, and another very ferocious one. On the opposite, we have Dark Crusade, which is a long song, over 6 minutes. It's very elaborate, but I think the closure is the one that stands out thanks to well-conceived doom metal riff, supported by granitic drumming and sporadic bass lines. It's important to talk about the value of Mental Funeral. When it was released, many people didn't realize how good it was, myself included. I have to admit that when I heard some songs from that, I skipped it and decided not to buy it, as I was flooded by an ocean of contemporary releases. But I was very wrong. Only after listening to several other death metal bands of the time, I understood that even if there are traditional death metal characteristics in that album, there are also many other peculiar things that make it a masterpiece of death metal, and it's in itself an extreme record that I have been able to appreciate only now, songwriting-wise. I used to listen to different albums from extreme metal bands, but I wasn't prepared for something like Mental Funeral, and in 1991 it was a real tough album, absolutely. There are several versions available of this album. Of course, we have the original vinyl and CD copies, but we can also find several reissues with remasters. We can find different versions with a slipcase, a digipack, or we can also find a CD and a DVD. Or you can also find the version in my hands, which came out in 2009 when Autopsy reunited, which is just a CD with 3 bonus tracks and additional photos. I also want to tell you that in my CD there are 2 small glitches. There are 2 very brief noises after the half of the song In the Grip of Winter. I don't know if it's a problem with the remaster, because I haven't been able to find anybody with the same CD, and I haven't found any online version of this 2009 reissue, but it's probably a glitch in my CD. In my opinion, it's an anomaly just in my CD, because all the other tracks are perfect without such noises. In conclusion, we have to say that this album is very extreme, and as you can see it from the cover, you can see that the cover anticipates what you're going to listen to music-wise and lyrics-wise. It's an abyss of repulsion, depravity, perversion, and monstrosity. In 1991 this album didn't sell very much, because most metalheads prefer to buy releases from Earache, Nuclear Blast or Roadrunner Records. Even Peaceville Records itself had better sales with Paradise Lost. The label mates in doom death metal of Autopsy, Paradise Lost, maybe they were helped because their genre was a bit more refined, maybe because they had a lot of promotional official videos out that Autopsy didn't have. I don't know. The result is that Autopsy built their own niche, and they have always had a very restricted but very devoted at the same time number of fans, which have been waiting for a Sophomore album after a Severed Survival, which could fill the gap. And with Mental Funeral, Autopsy have achieved this result completely. It would be easy and fast to describe Mental Funeral as a mix of early death with early dismember, together with Unleashed and Exhumed, so something in the way between US and Swedish death metal, with some tremolo picking, down tempos, and heavy power chords here and there. That's true, but it's not enough. It doesn't do justice to this album. This album is absolutely superior to the average for a number of reasons. First of all, we have odd time signatures that seamlessly work with the rest of the instruments. Secondly, we have non-confirmed tribalistic drumming by Reputed, which is very interesting. Then we have a lot of reverb in all of the instruments, which contributes in giving a general darker sound. Then, in comparison with the debut album, we not only have a big number of screams, but we also have several inhuman growls by Reputed, which make the singing more versatile. And we also have the two guitars in the doom metal parts that didn't appear on the debut album. The two guitars work hard to create different textures, and they make it in a great way. This is a very intelligent album, and it's an improvement from the debut album. I know somebody might be surprised, but I am of this opinion because in this album Autopsy have been able to differentiate all the tracks in a way that there are 12 different entities, and you cannot confuse some tracks with others, so it's very hard to make an extreme metal record with 12 tracks that have their own characteristics, their own signature. It's a very big effort, and it means that the band were very inspired. And another key thing is that Autopsy weren't looking to be the fastest or the most technical or the most brutal band of the year. They were focused on the songwriting and on the feelings that they wanted to deliver to the listeners. They have achieved this result because all these tracks contain a lot of emotions and time changes that really inspire us every time we listen to them. So this is a true masterpiece, a real massacre, but made in a very well-conceived way. Somehow, I'm sorry to say this, but this is the truth. Autopsy have always released good quality albums so far, but they haven't been able to achieve the peak that they reached in 1991 with Mental Funeral. If you like this video review and you want to know more details, you can read the written version on our website. If you want to leave a comment about this album, I'm very curious to learn your opinions and your anecdotes about Mental Funeral. If you wish, you can also subscribe to our channel to be informed about our next releases when they are published. Thanks for your time. I hope to see you in the next video review.